And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with the penultimate video in my relatively long series about my retro gaming emulation journey. So this series has been a long, slow path through the last couple of years where I started off thinking it'd be quite cool to emulate games. And now, today, I want to just cover one last weird, quirky thing about the retro scene, and that is light gun games. As always, this is just going to be an overview. This isn't going to be a technical guide, but it is going to clarify a lot of things that otherwise is a little bit murky and took me a little while to find out about. And as always, this is a chronicle of my journey, how I learned how to do it, how I fucked around and found out. And this is not something where I'm going to be providing links to any ROMs whatsoever. So no further ado, let's talk light gun games. I love light gun games, absolutely love them. I was such a massive fan of Virtua Cop and Virtua Cop 2 on my Sega Saturn growing up. I honestly can't think how much time I must have pumped into Virtua Cop 1 as a child, as a teenager. It was absolutely amazing. One of the very first games I bought with my own money on my own Saturn. I absolutely loved it, and I've loved light gun games ever since. They're just fantastic. From Time Crisis to House of the Dead, I've always been a huge, huge fan. I've always loved dual wielding and just going for it, and just it's great. The problem is now, because with modern consoles, light gun games really aren't a thing. The last generation to have light gun games was kind of Generation 7. So the PS3, for example, had Time Crisis Raising Storm, and the Wii had the Wii Zapper, which it used with stuff like Dead Space Extraction and things like that. But really, light gun games have kind of died. They've kind of left the living rooms, kind of left our homes, and gone back to the arcades where they started from. And that's a real shame. There's a couple of reasons for that. One being that actually light gun technology doesn't really work very well with LCD technology, so modern televisions. They actually work much better with old televisions, what they call CRT or cathode ray tube televisions. And so as a result, even if you somehow hooked up your PS1 or your Sega Saturn to your modern flat screen LCD TV, it wouldn't work properly because the light guns actually don't have the right technology to work with a screen like that. That's one of the reasons light guns have gone back to the arcades. But what that also means is that there is a gap in the market, and it's a gap in the market that quite a lot of companies are starting to fill, especially over the last couple of years. There's a variety of modern light guns that are now available, but I'm going to confine myself to talking about two in particular. The first one is the one that I've bought. I actually have purchased this. This is the Sinden light gun, and this is the Sinden website. I bought two blue light guns with recoil and a holster as well, which means you can sort of attach it to the side of your TV cabinet or your bookshelf or something. And I bought it from the Sinden website. They're pretty pricey, like that's a couple of £100 right there. But they're really cool, really good build quality. They work brilliantly on LCD TVs. Yeah, they're fantastic. Um, so the Sinden light gun is one that I've got and I would recommend. A couple of things I'll point out about this is they didn't work on my B-Link device when I had that and it was working. In other words, if you buy a sketchy Super Console X plug and play device off Amazon, you won't be able to plug in your Sinden light gun and they'll be able to work. Even though the light gun is something that comes with a USB connector, you can't plug it into the USB socket where you normally put in a controller and use it. Those cheap plug and play devices just don't support it. However, a PC would support it, and as a result, by extension, they do work on Batacera, which is brilliant because that means that I can plug in my Steam Deck with my Steam Deck dock, and I can plug in a light gun, and boom, I am away to go. I can play light gun games on a modern television. It's worth noting that the Sinden wiki, which I'm also showing you now, is amazing. It looks like Wikipedia, it looks awesome, but it's just sindenwiki.org, and it is a really useful technical wiki of how to get the Sinden light gun working on a whole bunch of different bits of software. Hardware. Um, and that is just awesome. I guess the more powerful the device that you're using, the more likely you are to be able to emulate things up to say PS2 and even PS3. But the Sinden wiki is really, really helpful. The Sinden light guns are really good. The feel is great. And whilst they don't work with low-end stuff, so and definitely not Android-based stuff like the B-Link, they do work on Windows-based stuff. So Batacera, my Steam Deck, and as I may have mentioned, and if not, I'm definitely going to mention it next time, I actually have a I actually have a laptop with the Batacera build on it, which I use for a lot of my retro gaming. That also uses, because it uses Batacera, that also allows me to use the Cinder Lightgun, and it is great. In other news, there is a second Lightgun that I want to talk about, and that's this, which is called the Game Lightgun. I don't actually know how it's pronounced. It's G apostrophe AIM apostrophe E. And the Game Lightgun is actually very, very recent. It's still in its Kickstarter, but as you can see from the website here, it looks awesome. It's slightly different to the Cinder that I've just been talking about, because the Cinder Lightgun allows you to put in your own ROMs, hook it up in your own device. Again, I would recommend using Batacera. Is one of the reasons I went with Batacera rather than Emu Deck or anything like that for my Steam Deck. But the thing about the Game Lightgun is that it actually has official software with it. It's actually been done in tandem with Bandai Namco. It's licensed, and it has Time Crisis. Not any of the sequels, but the original Time Crisis on PlayStation, which is awesome. And the guns themselves plug into a bespoke boutique little box that you have by the side of your TV, which is the box you can see on this website here, that's branded with Time Crisis. And if you have that, you can then play all this on a modern TV. Like the Cinder Lightgun, these Lightguns are designed to work on LCD TVs, which is awesome. I guess we're kind of looking at a renaissance or the revival of the Lightgun genre, or Lightgun retro genre on modern TVs, and that is amazing. I've got a couple of reservations about this game, Lightgun. My reservations vary, but long story short, it comes down to the fact that this is only something that can be used in conjunction with the game device, with the actual set-top box, which has got a couple of other games on there like Steel Gunner and things like that, but they're not very good. The only one of any note, to be honest, is Time Crisis. And I would prefer it if it had some of the more recent Time Crises, so Time Crisis 2 or 3 or anything like that. But that said, I'm not going to knock it. It's still a really cool addition to the Lightgun market, and I'd recommend checking it out on Kickstarter. I'm not going to do that because I don't do Kickstarters, basically. But what I will do is I'll wait for it to be released and then pick it up off eBay or Amazon, or if they've got like a retail store, I'll pick it up from there. So there we are. That's a quick overview of light guns in retro emulation. Long story short, if you're not using your original hardware, you need to emulate it. If you are using your original hardware, it's not going to work on a modern TV. You'll need to dig out a retro TV, so a CRT TV. I'm personally using the Cinder Lightgun, which has a lot of pros to it. Not least of all, it's fully released, it's not in Kickstarter. As well as that, it works on a wide range of devices, including Raspberry Pis or anything with a Windows basis like Batacera. And it can use basically anything that has a USB socket. You can hook it up to a whole range of ROMs. I've played PS2 games and Sega Saturn games on there. You're not just limited to the particular ROM that it's designed for. It can be used in a whole bunch of things. And remember, Batacera includes full Sinden compatibility, which is awesome. On the other hand, if you want something maybe a little bit more retro feeling or less versatile for some reason, then the Time Crisis option in the game Lightgun is pretty cool. It actually looks very neat and very slick, and is literally very plug and play. So in some ways, it's easier than Batacera. I'm not going to knock it. I'll be honest with you, I'm keeping an eye on the game Lightgun. I'm reading reviews about it. I'm seeing how the Kickstarter works out, and I probably will pick one up, if only that I can then have it at my girlfriend's house and she won't really notice. It's a nice small little device. I can plug it in on the side of her TV, and then when I've got some time, I can use the game Lightguns to play some Time Crisis there. So actually, it's probably worth picking up for that use case scenario for me, at least. I hope that's okay. I hope that's interesting. I hope you found this final, or rather penultimate video on light guns useful. And this really kind of marked the end of my retro gaming emulation journey, ending with light guns, which I did pick up. In the next and final video in the series, what I'm going to talk about a little bit is backlogs, physical collecting, and kind of the emotional journey that I've been on with this and where I've ended up, including the fact that I'm now kind of dipping out of playing video games as a whole. I've decided to change my habits, I've decided to change my perspective, and I'll talk about it more next time. Until then, stay classy.